Okay, hi, this is K.N.Fitzwater, and we're on the next episode of Our Life Beginnings and Always, and we just realized we are adopted. And we are going to finish up this episode and see what happens next. You step into the living room, you find your moms quietly sitting together at the kitchen table. They both got to their feet when they noticed the arrival, and Mom gave you a careful smile. We're so glad to see you. Sorry for walking away before. Everything's alright. Actually, I'm going to say that. Everything's alright. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Really wonderful. Mom then came over and wrapped her arms around you and Elizabeth, giving you a tight hug. Take long for Mom to join in, putting her arms around the both of you. We really couldn't have asked for better kiddos. We love you. More than we could ever say. Mom! He smiled at their comfort. You were so glad your moms were all right. You're smushing me. uh, I've been selecting a lot of blue options. I probably should change it up, but now you smiled at their comfort. I love you too. It was a nice moment and you enjoyed it as long as you could. They both pulled back eventually and grinned at the two of you, and you knew that you all had each other, and you always would. Wow, Lee is so tiny. Hey, I hope you're alright. Lee came up towards you and saw a smile plastering on her face. And are you okay, Elizabeth? Elizabeth rolled her eyes and huffed a breath, and you knew she wasn't used to showing her vulnerable side. I'm doing fine. Lee nodded, though you could tell she didn't quite believe her. Well, now, since we're all here, how about we do something together as a family? That sounds like an excellent idea. We should have some fun before the night's over. I love the sound of that. Why not? It's got a suggestion. Should be something we could do here in the house with everyone in the same room. Suddenly remembered the show you and Lee had worked on earlier. Maybe we could do our show. A show? This is the first time we were hearing of this. I'm intrigued. It would be amazing if you put it on for us to watch. Oh yeah, I need to see what you cooked up. You smiled at Lee, who returned the gesture while bouncing on her heels in excitement. Take some seats, and we'll get everything together. Your moms collected the chairs from around the dining table and set them in a row in the living room, where there was enough space for the show. While they did that, you and Lee quickly gathered the supplies you needed and rehashed the plan one last time. You listened through the song you had chosen one last time, and you collected your instrument for your room, making sure it was ready to go. When the two of you returned to the living room, everyone was sitting and chatting amongst themselves while they waited. The group quieted down when you and Lee stood in front of them on your makeshift stage. Lee was buzzing quietly with excitement beside you. Actually, it's family. I wouldn't mind. You were pumped for the show. The time you and Lee had put into practice was worth it. You were ready to go. Okay, so welcome to our show. We only came up with it today, but we promised it would be good. No refunds! No refunds! Laughter rippled through the mini audience. Then you nodded at Lee that you were ready to begin. Lee took in a deep breath, waiting the few beats it took to get into the song, and started singing. He concentrated hard on hitting the right notes on your violin. Then the performance was over. Lee took your hand in hers. The two of you bowed deeply together. Everyone gave you a round of applause and cheered for an encore. When you straightened yourself up, you were happy to see that even Elizabeth was clapping for you. Bravo! Bravo! You are so talented. Your family rose from their seats and came over to congratulate you more directly. You were beaming from ear to ear. Your parents gush about how great everything was and thank you for sharing it with them. Elizabeth was complimentary in her own way. Although she did describe the show as cute, which you knew she meant as kind of kidding. You laughed it off, however, and were just happy that everyone had a nice time. In that moment, you couldn't have been more pleased to be part of the family you had. Oh, that was wonderful. That was really great. Alright, I am going to save that. And we are going to hop into the next one. Okay. We are going to take a road trip. I really don't want to do any more domestic stuff, and we're still going to wait on the wave. And I thought maybe the road trip would be a really good one. So let's do it. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity, as both you and your family and close prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street, just outside your house, was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. That's so cool! You glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had been a mixed bag for him. It was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best he could. Your family joining them probably added to the muddled emotions. You weren't exactly sure how it happened. You knew your parents and Coves spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. Parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. They had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in. You had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it, Eliza, kiddo. Mom bustled with a cooler one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. There I am. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. Gonna need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. When I was younger, I didn't mind getting up in the mornings. But as I got older, especially now, I really don't care for waking up in the mornings. So I would say I'm in the middle. You just tried to keep up and take in some deep breaths. The air was still a little damp from dew. You didn't mind it. And then at the end of the chain came your sister. She had a bone to pick after the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on. I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Cypher's the youngest, and I never fell asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. Like the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of their RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior, the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on to her objections with him. There's a main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed. Kyra was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Lisbeth would be switched between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the beds with mom. I probably would do this. Um, well, let's go ahead and rattle off the stuff here. You were fine with the arrangements. You were excited to sleep in the loft. You felt sharing a bed with your parents is going to be awkward. Yeah, that could be weird. You were looking forward to a sleepover with your moms. You weren't happy either, but didn't want to make a fuss, which, I've been there. You thought it was unfair. I would go with this. You weren't a kid anymore, and yet you're gonna have to sleep next to your moms. They assured you they tried to give you space for the one night you had to share. You're still not pleased. Alright, you lot, does anyone have everything they need? We headed out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bedhead hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, setting her hands on her hips. What about you, Cypher? Do you have all your clothes packed, toiletries, deodorant, floss, and everything else you could think of? Oh, you had to run back inside for something. Now, normally I pack everything. You weren't sure about that. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I can't remember what. Ma chuckled and gave you a squeeze on the shoulder. I get like that on trips too, so I learned to pack extra just in case I or anyone else forgets. With the amount of supplies we stuffed to the RV, I think we'll be okay. Only a few days after all. Thanks, Ma. With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow, and blankets, usual day-to-day gear for most people. But some more personal things, such as a couple of things to read. You had packed one of your own favorites and a new one you never tried before. You knew you had plenty of time for them both on such a long trip. Let's see. I will always do this too when I was younger. Pencils some paper. You had to be prepared in case you saw something to sketch at the park. Or you had to write anything down if you needed to pass time just doodling. And this, I always had music. Always. With so much time going to be spent driving in a car, you wanted to make sure you're able to have some music to put on. Oh, now finally, it's a proper list. Oh, camera. Yeah, I gotta have my camera. It was just a little pocket camera you got from your mom's, but you couldn't miss the opportunity to take some new snaps. And that was everything. Hey, let me take that for you, Cypher. I've still in the RV. There's a few spots left. They'll fit. You let Kyra take your bag and give her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watch the others get ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. We were finishing packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. Their they high-five whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartments of these vehicles. Even though your own parents were more low-key than close, you could tell they're both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away anywhere together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, a bag slung over her shoulder. You were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. Usually, she wasn't the one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV or food. To leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packing an RV with 6 others would be too much for her. But it was a nice surprise. Suppose any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. Kev had been pretty quiet so far, and more than anything, seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. Um, I would be excited right off the bat when I hear the news because I remember doing school trips and all that for orchestra and for school trips in general. So I would be excited when I hear the news, but then my excitement will get the best of me and then I get exhausted when the trip finally happens. So, try to find one that's more suitable with what I used to do. Uh, you were eager to get to the destination. Seemed close. Um, See, I'm afraid that if I selected this, I would be hyper, like the coves. I would have a very low key excitement because I would be exhausted from my anxious energy being built up. I also don't travel very well. I get motion sickness, so sometimes I'm a little bit anxious about, ruining everything because I would get sick. So I always kind of curb my enthusiasm, so to speak. But I know that once I get there, it'll be fine. So I guess I'll do that one. That would be more fitting. You've been looking up the park online and couldn't wait to explore everything it had to offer. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Everything piled into the RV, it was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving, cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kyra were all huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. It was a sense of relief when the first leg of the trip was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out the driver's area, leaving Co's dad to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Or you realized that the engine of the RV came to a stop, only halted for a few minutes as Cliff jumped out of the driver's seat and Mom took over. Mom was sitting shotgun and gave Mom a quick tutorial on the controls, as it is her first time driving anything this large. Now, it never did RV. Never. So, that was cool. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. We're making good progress. Yeah, maybe we should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slapping into place. I don't need sleep. I still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscle to drive the point about how resilient he was home. Kyra rolled her eyes in amusement. Dad, everybody has to sleep. Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair. Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I could prepare for my funeral. Write out my will to my mom's and maybe my sister. Just want to make sure. If I have to get out the paper and pen. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. I was expecting her to pull up a hole in the funeral bit. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kyra laughed lightheartedly. Lucky for all of us, we had enough adults to cover the shifts today. He will be driving again until tomorrow. Phew, that's a relief. I actually know what to do that. It's not his driving I'm worried about. Let's not forget how many times Mom had to put a dent in our car. It was only once. And neither of those times was my fault, thank you very much. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join in the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants. Is it? Is it me, or I thought we were in between the 90s and 2000s? Like 1999, something like that? I thought that's what it was. Because the phone in the dock looks like what it was back then. I'm so confused about the timeline of the story. That's just the aesthetic of the decal. It's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kyra wrinkled her nose and thought. Yes I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her, while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed. You held on to the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head before a weight settled on your brown hair. When you tilted your chin up carefully to look, you heard the rustling of the bag of chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. You took a handful. Reaching up, you scoop up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. She's like one of the best sisters ever. That's so cool. And I say that because my sister is not really that interactive, I should say. In fact, she doesn't want to do anything with me. You happily munched away as the conversation continued and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by with a great of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and setting up for the night. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You had all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after had arrived at your destination and found a spot to park in the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were. Cove, having completely fallen asleep, curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kyra was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Smart. Kyra herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through the magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. See, Mr. Holden needed to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you before crawling onto the bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing. Get a good rest, Cypher. We got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
That's fantastic.
I am looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There are plenty for us to see. We stayed awake for a little while longer while your moms whispered about the park and the forest in general. With the sound of voices in the background, eventually you nodded off to sleep. The next morning, you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. You had an okay sleep. It was nothing compared to your bed at home, but at least you didn't have to sleep on the floor, so you couldn't complain too much. Ma whined a bit about the firmness in the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own, as the others were doing the same thing. Puff was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. Parents were checking, double checking, triple checking that you had everything, to the point where you had to stop listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the looks of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from it. It didn't take much longer until you were all exited the RV in a bustle and headed to the Redwood National Park. That's so cool. I'd never been to the Redwood National Park or any other national parks. In fact, my parents and my little brother get to do a lot of these nature stuff because of the scouts. And I wish I could go along. The only thing that kept me from really enjoying everything was the spiders. But besides that, it was okay just walking around. But I never had a chance to do real camping. Wow. Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they were going to be in person. Smile, you two. Spun in time for Kyra to snap a picture of you and Cove together, before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protests that she should just enjoy the moment. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in the brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smile at them, thinking your mom just must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide, if you know so much about the place. Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. You were in awe of the redwood trees? Actually, yeah, I would be. I would be very fascinated by the trees. Surrounding you on either side, the enormous trees shot up into the sky, the sunlight peeking through their canopy, speckling the path in front of you. The sheer size of the redwoods make you feel like a tiny ant bustling along through the forest. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks rather than any serious hiking. You could stroll along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you. Immediately, you could tell by her expression she was going to say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove spared her a look but said nothing, and instead continued walking along. Just watch. Next year, they'll be talking about their next new amazing idea. She put on a fake voice, deeper than her own. We should just sell both of our houses and move in together. Think of how much we could save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You suppose he was just used to it by this point? But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from one another. from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you. Maybe one day we'll be related. Legally, anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. I don't know why me and Cypher always get paired up for these kind of jokes. There's no law saying you have to marry someone your own age. Anyone could say me and you are the ones who will get married one day. Me? In your dreams? Oh, my goodness. Choices. See, I selected the crush because I wanted to have this character just start crushing on Cove. And I would have, you know, maybe would have crushed on Cove if I was in their shoes. But they really are laying it thick. I would definitely not say this. That's for sure. I wouldn't say this. You told her to cut it out already. You don't need to ruin the day with that. Oh, I thought you'd be happy someone put the idea in Cove's head. I don't think he's making plans about marrying anyone right now. Elizabeth made a smug face, saying in a sing-song voice, "How sad for you." He sighed. The day continued on with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Mom said that would have to wait for another trip. It was a little strained during the walk that you sat beside and set out a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit sandwiches and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. Oh, only one day? You were glad you got to do this in the end? I didn't know it was one day. I thought they were able to do more. Yeah, I would do this, for sure. I did not know it was one day. There was so much here, and you felt you need a whole week, maybe even more, to experience it all. Sigh quietly to yourself, wondering if you get the chance to come back. The group made it back to camp just as the sun was setting in the sky and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed the different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner, and afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It's nice to have space to yourselves after the cramped journey there, and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. Now you hang out with Cove. I guess we should figure out something to do. You took a seat on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. There was an uncomfortable silence for a few moments, until Cove started to talk about how he felt about the park. Two of you made light conversation for a while, and it wasn't so bad. You got to share your experiences from the day with him too. He seemed to be happy to hear them. Parents all arrived soon after, and each of them climbing into their RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth had heard the commotion came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. We spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, Mom did a final round to make sure nothing has been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for all of them to get up. Now is the time to check you haven't let anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, headed to the back room while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below in the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It's hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you would be back in your own bed at home. Oh, geez, I'm stuck with these two. You enjoyed this mini adventure. We've been selecting a lot of blue. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently, and it didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kyra to drift up to you. They were asleep now. You poke your head up from the loft and blink through the dark. Cove's parents were indeed out, and Cove looked to be staring at the ceiling. He slipped back into the loft fully before getting caught. You then decided to have fun quietly. You buried yourself under the blanket and pulled out your books as silently as possible. While hidden away in your own little spot, you spent your sure not. How do you say the sentences? Okay. While hidden away in your own little spot, you spent your. Okay, I'm struggling because this sentence is a little difficult. Please. I know it's early access, but please fix this. While hidden away in your own little spot, you're not sure how long getting some extra time to enjoy yourself. Oh my god. But at some point, your eyes grew heavy and you gently drifted off into a deep sleep. When you woke up the next morning, it was off to the. Ah! Okay. The struggle is real. When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it traveled the long journey home. Still blinking sleepily, you peek over the edge of the loft to get a glimpse of what was happening. Cove was sitting with his mom on the couch, the two of them talking quietly. They must have noticed you moving around up there because Cove's ocean blue eyes snapped to yours and he gave you a smile. Aww. Morning, Cypher. Morning, Cove. Soon your mom and Elizabeth emerged from their room, dressed and ready for the day of travel. They spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Ira suggested a few different travel games she used to play with Cove when he was younger. They all had a great time competing against each other. When the RV finally pulled into your street, it was well into the night. You were looking forward to crawling to your own bed after the last few days. Everyone else must have been feeling the same because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV will wait until morning. Once home again, you went straight up to your room and dropped into your bed, shoes and all. It felt good to finally be alone. After 3 days squashed together in the RV like a can of sardines, have your own private space again felt great. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow, life will go on like normal. And that is your trip.